Welcome to The Accident. This is a series of programs about motor vehicle accident survivors. This is a program about helmet or no helmet. And today we're going to take a look at the controversies and the benefits of wearing a helmet, particularly for motorcyclists. To begin with, there's a number of facts about accidents that we should probably take a look at first. Motorcyclists make up less than 2% of all registered vehicles and only 0.4% of all vehicle miles traveled. But motorcyclists account for over 9% of total traffic fatalities. This is information that people should be aware of. Fatalities amongst motorcycle riders have increased by more than 127% since 1997. And 1 out of 4 motorcycle riders in fatal crashes back in 2008 were riding their vehicles with invalid licenses. So per vehicle miles traveled, motorcyclists are about 21 times as likely as passenger car occupants to die in a traffic crash and 4 times as likely to be injured. Well, this kind of data makes you think that being on a motorcycle is something that a person should prepare for. And to get a valid license, there are training courses. In fact, Ross, when you were probably getting ready to drive your motorcycle, there was probably some training. And I'd like to introduce motorcycle ex-rider, Ross Gallagher, who's with me today. Ross has a unique story. He survived an accident that could have easily been fatal and wasn't. And we have some slides that we're going to show which will help the audience to understand just what the impact of this accident was. Ross, this is a picture of you, and maybe I could ask you to describe what's going on here.
At this scene here, they are trying to distinguish if I have a broken neck or not. They're both the EMT and the policeman there are investigating. I don't remember this, but that was my passenger that was with me. They too are checking to see if she is broken neck or not, and this is a kind of a scene of where both of us were laying on Midland Road there.
And as we look at this picture, at the time of this accident, both of you were unconscious and were being treated by paramedics and sheriffs and other first responders that showed up. This picture here is pretty graphic. They got the board out. They're going to put you on it.
Yep. They already got the neck brace on. So this is, again, I don't remember this, but that's...
Well, here's an interesting thing to maybe add to this. The average cost of treating motorcycle accident head injuries is about $43,000. And not that this applies to you, but 50% of motorcycle accident victims do not have private health insurance, and their medical bills are paid by Medicaid. So this is a public expense in some way, and I'm not saying that it was with you, because I know that wasn't the case for you. Tell us a little bit more about your experience after the accident, the treatment, those kinds of things, because people may not realize that even though you look pretty good, you're a handsome dude here sitting with me and you're a big guy and everything, but this really changed your life.
Yeah, once I got out of the hospital and I knew my injuries of a broken collarbone and a shattered shoulder blade, I had some damage to my knee, and I was there at St. Mary's for I think a little over 5 days in ER trauma unit. And once I got out of there and I started getting home health care, started showing my mother and I what we can do to protect my knee and to things like that. Physical therapy at home for a while. Then just as the months go on and when things started to heal, then I started to notice the shoulder problem. Had rotator cuff surgery, and then just recently I had back surgery. So it's a long road of recovery, and I still am recovering to this day from all those things that, all those surgeries and things like that.
You were in St. Mary's of Saginaw in the hospital for how long?
A little over 5 days.
Okay. And now, the accident's been about a year, right?
Yep.
7/7 of 2011.
Yep.
And we're almost 1 year out. So it's been a long year.
Yep.
How about you show us a little bit about your helmet, because I think this is a story of itself.
This is the helmet I was wearing the night of my motorcycle accident. You can see where I have written the date. That was where most of the impact took on the left side, and scraping the face.
Right here, you've got something right that says, "Just think if I didn't have this on."
Yeah, my face would probably be totally destroyed. As you can see, that as you go around all the scrapings, and it goes all the way around the helmet, even the back side. So it's pretty extensive damage to this helmet instead of my face.
So you would have left a lot of you on Midland Road,
I would have.
and you wouldn't be here handsome talking to us right now.
Nope.
Yeah.
So helmets do save lives. Any riders that ride today suggest wearing a helmet is a very good idea.
Yeah.
You never know when it's going to hit.
If we can look at this and think about the impact that this had on your life in terms of thoughts that have now taken place afterwards. Obviously, before the accident, you might have had one opinion about helmets and driving on motorcycles, and now you have a different one. And would it be fair to say that before this accident, if you had a chance to ride without a helmet, you would have?
Yes, I think I would have taken that chance of, saying I could go to the store, it's just down the street, I just, nothing's going to happen. I can just buzz home. So, yeah, I think this accident has changed my view of wearing a helmet, that now I would always wear a helmet no matter what.
Okay, all right. So one of the lessons from this, and I think this is something we want to share for other people, is that when people talk about helmet safety, it really does protect the person who's wearing it.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, it's necessary equipment,
Yep.
just like other things would be. Okay. Well, I want to move on to our next guest, who's going to be talking about the implications of injuries. But let me talk a little bit about motorcycle helmet facts. Helmets are 67% effective in preventing brain injuries to motorcycle riders. Helmets are estimated to be 37% effective in preventing fatal injuries to motorcycle riders and 41% of motorcycle passengers. And in this case, both Ross and his passenger survived the accident, probably because they had motorcycle helmets on. Motorcycle helmet facts. An estimated $13.2 billion was saved from 1984 through 1999 because of motorcycle helmet use. An additional $11.1 billion could have been saved if all motorcyclists had worn helmets. Now, if you're one of those people that is concerned about health care costs, a simple way to save billions of dollars is to have everybody wear a helmet. If you're not, then fine. But I want to introduce somebody here who can tell us a little bit more about helmet safety. And Kelly Jenkins is with me. She's joined us. And she has information about an organization that she's with. Kelly, tell us what you know.
Well, I'm the Injury Prevention Coordinator at Field Neurosciences Institute, and we have a chapter of an organization called Think First. It's a national injury prevention organization founded by America's neurosurgeons with the strict mission of preventing and reducing traumatic brain and spinal cord injuries. And we do it through educational programs in the schools as well as throughout the community. And we're particularly well known for our bike helmet program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think many people have benefited from the giveaways that take place and bring people to consciousness. Now, one of the things that we've discovered over time is that injuries that take place to brains can have a profound effect on a person's life. Would you like to speak about that a little bit?
I would. You know, one of the things that we remind people of is that unlike many other parts of your body, we can heal so many things. Physicians have miraculous abilities to repair and replace things, but not the brain. The brain is unique in that it does not regrow and it cannot be replaced. And so what I would like to do is talk a little bit about the anatomy of the brain and teach people what a brain injury actually looks like.
Okay.
Because it's pretty
for the audience
dramatic.
at home, this is not
Sorry.
a real brain.
No, it's not.
So we're not pulling out some brain out of a skull someplace from a cadaver. So go ahead.
So you'll see an image here, not only of me holding a model of a life-size and lifelike brain. It is the consistency, as you can tell, of soft jello.
Yeah.
Right. And we use this when we educate students and adults so that they have a better understanding of the fact that your brain, this very soft, gelatinous organism, is nestled inside the skull. And while the skull gives it some level of protection, that protection is limited.
Yeah, and I want to point out something that happens is if you look at a skull, this is all hard material, and a brain sliding around in here at 60 miles an hour, slamming into bone, is going to get damaged.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we sometimes think that the head protects, but in cases of sudden jarring injuries, this is actually where the damage takes place.
That's correct.
Within this cranium here.
That's right. And the cranium is a closed system. And so as we look at a series of images that I've brought with us, we'll get a little bit of a better understanding of what happens during an actual brain injury.
Okay, we'll look at those images now. Go ahead.
And so in the image that the viewer is seeing right now is just a top-down image of this type of brain that I'm holding. And you're seeing that each side of the brain, there's two halves or two hemispheres, is identical to the other. This is going to be useful for physicians when they look at the brain in image-guided or any kind of imaging system to detect if there's been some kind of damage. This is another image of the brain. This is a sagittal or a sideways view, so on the left side of the screen would be your eyes. And so take a look at how nice and tight this brain is. We're going to see one that's swollen in a little bit so that you can compare and contrast the two. This image just demonstrates to us and to the audience that the practitioners, the neurosurgeons, know where certain functions take place in the brain, which is helpful when the brain has been damaged and rehabilitation can occur, such that we can anticipate that there might be an issue with language, speech, cognition, emotion, movement, any of your five senses, and the list goes on and on and on.
And I might want to point out that depending on the site of the injury, specific rehabilitation then needs to take place, whether it be speech, occupational, physical therapy, or whatever, to take care of the damage and to retrain the brain to be able to function in those ways.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, and so we sometimes forget, like in the case of Ross, it might take a year, 2 or 3 to recover from an injury.
That's very true, and the sad irony is that people who choose not to wear helmets are doing so because they put a value and a price on independence and being able to make their own decisions. And when brain injuries occur, particularly the ones that are moderate to severe, they're often stripped of the ability to make those decisions and maintain that level of independence.
So it's a high price to pay.
It is a high price to pay.
Okay. We have some more images I think we're going to look at.
We do. They start to get a little more graphic, but this image is sometimes people will refer to brain injury as your brain gets scrambled, and it certainly can. In the top portion, you see the brain sort of being in a sort of a whiplash motion. So the brain can smash against the inside of the skull, it can twist, it can turn, and what happens is it bleeds. The blood vessels rupture, bleeding occurs, swelling occurs, and that swelling puts pressure on all the other healthy parts of the brain. And so the physicians have a real challenge ahead of them. And what they do initially is take a look at your brain through either a CT scan or an MRI. And you can see in this brain, in contrast to the previous images where you saw both sides of the brain were identical, you can see here clearly that the two sides are not identical, and some of the white areas are where there's swelling due to probably bleeding.
So the brain now is damaged and is in a serious situation.
That's right.
Yeah.
And here, now this is an image of a subdural hematoma, which is essentially saying there's blood on the brain or a bruise on the brain. These can happen rapidly or slowly. And you're going to see a picture of some autopsied brains here shortly, so I give the viewers a bit of a warning. So in this top portion, you're seeing a brain from underneath. So you're looking from underneath your chin up into the brain, and you can see where some injuries cause bleeding, lacerations, coup contra coup, which is that backward and forward motion, herniation, and that can cause rapid bleeding or severe bleeding and swelling and brain death. And you see it's sort of a slice of the brain that has atrophy or death. Parts of it have died on the bottom slide. So subdural hematoma, again, this is an autopsy brain. You can see the front on the right side. There's a split down the middle of where you can sort of detect the two hemispheres, and the hemisphere on the lower half of the screen has massive bleeding and swelling. And this is what brain injury looks like in the emergency room when somebody's died. Mm-hmm. And this is the final slide. This is where the top of the cranium has been removed. What you're seeing at the top of the screen is a lot of blood. There's been obviously some blunt trauma here to the right side of this head. You see the dura mater, which is sort of the covering over the brain that's been disrupted. And you can actually see where the brain has shifted down. And this is what can happen when somebody hits the pavement without a helmet on, sadly.
Well, you know, those kinds of images are stark contrast to what we think happens to people because of Hollywood and television depictions where people get up. Tom Cruise gets off a motorcycle after a big crash and he runs along and he doesn't seem to be hurt. And those kinds of things are fictitious. And I think that I need to point that out because people think that if they come off of a motorcycle accident, they're just going to be able to get up and move along. And I think more accurately, they probably might end up like Ross did, unconscious on a highway someplace, waiting for somebody to take care of them. Yep. Ross, what's your thoughts about this after hearing what Kelly had to say?
Well, it's definitely, you know, the slides were showing what does happen when the helmet is not in use. And really, it's like I brought up before in the beginning that the helmets do save lives and they do protect your brain.
Yeah. Now, as a motorcycle driver, it probably would be more pleasant not to have a helmet. You might be able to see more or something. Is that what it would be about?
Yeah, you could see more. You know, it's hot. You know, when I was riding, it was, you know, the days I didn't want to wear a jacket because it was 80, 90 out, but I knew what that jacket was doing for me, and as well as the helmet. Even though it was hot, sweaty, I knew what these items were doing for me personally.
Yeah. Okay, so it's protection.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. Kelly, as we look at helmets as something that's evolved over time, particularly as a safety item, your organization and others have tried to make people more aware. How are people receiving that kind of message?
You know, generally very positively. Families are grateful for the information. They're certainly grateful for the cost price of the helmets, be they free or semi-subsidized.
And I should mention that you're always looking for sponsors who want to help you give away helmets to kids out there, right?
Absolutely.
So if anybody wants to sponsor this, they can contact Field Neurosciences, Kelly Jenkins, and make a donation, and then they'll get recognized for it. And some kids someplace will be wearing helmets instead of running around without them, right?
That's right. They can go to fni.org and find my contact information. They can earmark where they would like their donation to go, whether it be a classroom, a school, a community public health event. So we're very flexible. We just want to get the kids in helmets.
Yeah.
And the adults.
Yeah. And I guess the sooner kids learn that helmets are part of their environment, the easier it is for them to just use them in all instances where there's safety issues.
It becomes a habit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes a behavioral habit, and it's not even sometimes a conscious choice. They do it without thinking.
Yeah. Now, I remember when football players didn't wear helmets.
You're dating yourself now,
Yeah,
Ziggy.
but I remember that day. And they wear them now, and even with helmets, they still have injuries.
They do indeed,
So
yeah.
then I guess the same thing is true with any helmet. Ross has got a great helmet there, and it probably prevented many injuries, but it doesn't stop it completely, right?
No, it doesn't. Nothing. There's no. There's nothing that will prevent all risks.
Yeah, and there is a risk factor. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about some other motorcycle facts here and bring this into context. And when we look at motorcycle helmet law facts, in 2006, 65% of fatally injured motorcycle riders were not wearing helmets in states without all-rider helmet laws, compared to only 13% in states with those laws. And so by an overwhelming majority, 80% of Americans, in fact, favor laws requiring motorcyclists to wear helmets. And this was a Lou Harris poll back in 2004. So we know that the public supports helmet use. And we know that intuitively, we know that wearing a helmet is safer than not wearing a helmet.
Correct.
But yet we still have an issue here. And I'm wondering, why is it that we can't be more scientific here and more evidence-based and more accountable to those kinds of things?
That's a good question. That's a very difficult question to answer. But the data exists. I mean, it's clear. There's been many studies done, and there's been data that has tracked the number of injuries recently in the last 2 months since Michigan's helmet repeal. And we know that a higher percentage of the fatalities occurred in those in the population not wearing helmets than those who did.
Yeah, that's
no one wants to see anyone die or become injured.
Yeah, and that's a law that just changed a couple months ago, and I looked at some of the data, and the preliminary data on like 700 crashes is that those people who weren't wearing helmets had over a 25% greater fatality fact-based associated with it. So there was a 25% chance that they're going to die or have very serious injuries compared to those that were wearing helmets. And so it's a big spike in just a very short time.
It is.
Well, as the viewers of this program probably understand, I have a certain bias here because I've worked with head injury patients for years and have seen people who've had to struggle after those. And my feeling has always been that be conservative, protect your head as much as possible. In fact, I even have a hard hat when I'm working around cutting limbs or something now because I know people have had tree limbs hit them in the head and so forth. What can all of us possibly do in the future to promote helmet safety?
I tell most people that lead by example.
Okay.
You know, the parents so frequently come in and they're excited to have their child in a helmet and fitted by somebody who understands how the helmet is meant to fit properly. But then the child tugs on their arm and says, well, Mom, you should get one too. And so and grandparents as well. Grandparents actually have been a very open group in terms of embracing wearing helmets to set the example for their grandchildren. So
Okay.
lead by example.
Lead by example. Well, I know that I wear a bicycle helmet when I go bicycling, and I encourage everybody else to do so. We have extra helmets for that reason.
Sure.
Ross, anything you want to add as we close here?
Just that one of the things I wanted to bring out was when you're involved in an accident, and as mine was severe, you not only had to think about you had to think about the others, Mom and Dad that were there by my side from beginning to end, and they truly helped. So when coming to decisions like this, you had to think about others instead of yourself, because it will affect the rest of your family and friends.
Okay, that's very good. It's not just a singular thing. Well, I thank you for watching this program. And again, this is part of a series on accidents, and motorcycle was the area that we focused on today. We look forward to any comments you have about this. You can contact us. There's an email that you can send to me if you want. I have my email address. But anyways, thank you so much. And as always, be safe. Wear a helmet. And if you're not wearing a helmet, think about the consequences. Thank you.